stage.
Oh my God, the hands are fabulous.
Hi there. Oh, I guess this isn't gonna work. I thought it was a good idea that you wouldn't have to look at my face, but we'll give up on that. I really didn't intend to use that. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Good.
I sure wish I could either sing or play the guitar like Amanda, but I can't do either, and about the only thing that I've learned to do in life is talk. So unfortunately, you're stuck with having to listen to me for a few minutes. Before I get started, there's a couple things. The few people here, I know there are a couple. My girlfriend Millie and Jim, wherever he is. Jim, you out there somewhere? Jim and my sister Patty. Please turn your hearing aids up to 11, or you won't be able to hear anything that I say. Please. And then also, before I did this, I asked about whether or not it had to be clean comedy, and I was told that I couldn't use the F word. And so I'm not good about following rules, so I'm just going to go ahead and use the F word to get started, okay? And the F word is what? Facebook. I promise that's it. I got it out of my system. I won't use it. Well, maybe a little bit later. I also want to just mention that I'm dedicating this, and the reason I even tried to do stand-up comedy a few years ago was in honor of my son-in-law, Chuck Harris, who has since passed away. And Chuck was confined to a wheelchair, and he couldn't stand up. And so unfortunately, and I'll tell you a little bit more about this later, but he used to be, like, I'm going to move this up a little bit. Anybody know how this works?
You broke it.
Don't break it. Don't break
You buy it.
You already broke it. Already broke it.
Too late.
He done broke it.
There's two more, just,
What?
so there's two more mics, so I mean, if we break this one.
That's great. That's better.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you very
nice
much.
to stand.
Try
Oh,
for a
that's
second.
okay.
I think it's
enough
busted. I think
Anyway,
it's-
Chuck
I don't think
Chuck
it's great.
was in his wheelchair. He had to listen to me practice the stand-up comedy a couple of years ago. And, anyway, it's this. I want to dedicate my thoughts tonight to him. Chuck's favorite color was orange, so Halloween is always a nice time for me to remember Chuck, and that's why I try to wear something orange every day. Well, Halloween is both fun, and you know the people that are here. I saw Sergeant Pepper here, and Cruella DeVille, and Elvira. You know, it's a fun holiday. See some pink hair back here. It's a fun holiday, but it also has a very dark side to it. And did I see the Grim Reaper here somewhere, or someone close to it carrying a, you know, whatever the tool of the Grim Reaper is? So, you know, hopefully tonight I'll be able to touch on both of those, some fun things and some little bit darker type things. Fall is a really fun time of the year. For me, I like it. I like the fact that there's a football game going on down at Ames Field tonight. I like the festivals. I like to see the change of the colors. But there's one thing about fall that I've grown just a little bit tired of, and that's pumpkin spice. Does anybody else feel that way? Okay, because I've seen my daughter's a huge pumpkin spice fan. She has everything in her house pumpkin spice, and I'm just tired of it. In fact, it's gotten so bad. And you know, when you're doing comedy, there's a couple of things that people use for terms to describe what happens on stage. It's, you know, I heard somebody talk about the word bomb before, but two of them are you want to kill. You want people to like it, and they call that killing. And the other thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to die on stage. Well, if I have a choice in the next 6 days, I have no problem with all dying on this stage because I'm not funny. Because next Wednesday I will be at the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio, having major open heart surgery. And that's not a joke, that's actually happening on Halloween Day. Halloween Day. So the subjects of death and dying have been on my mind a lot lately. And I don't want to think that I'm just being morbid or macabre, you know, but things have been on my mind. You know, the fact that I visited a funeral home to talk about what would happen if I did die, and the fact that I did a will and all those things this week, I guess says that death is just is just a little bit on my mind. And I try to laugh about it to keep from crying all the time as you think about that. Well, as you think about the messages that come along with that, one of the things that happened to me, and tying this with pumpkin spice, the other day I got a little packet in the mail from the Cleveland Clinic, and it was very thoughtful. And I thought, well, this is great. You know, some stuff that would help me before my surgery and when I get home from my surgery. But they went overboard because I got pumpkin spice hemorrhoid cream. I got a pumpkin scented enema kit. And I got some pumpkin scented Depends in case I need those after the surgery. I think that's just going a little bit too far. So there are some mixed messages that come with death. You know, one of the ones that confuses me, and I have family here tonight that I know are very devout Christians, and we've talked about this, and that is that a lot of times you'll hear people say, how are you doing? Say, well, at least I'm on this side of the grave. Well, if you believe in the afterlife, I think that maybe you'd be happier on the other side of the grave. In fact, one of our sisters, our sister Joyce, I think it was quoted saying, "Don't threaten me with heaven." And a friend of mine, his wife, wrote a song called "You Won't Get to Heaven Alive." And so, it's a mixed thing. There's something in the Bible about to live is Christ, and to die is gain. It's better in the next life. Well, I don't know about that, but I do know that my grandson, who's just turned 10 years old, had an interesting twist on this. Made me think a little bit. I've been very fortunate, along with my son-in-law Chuck. I took him on a road trip 2 years ago. He passed away last year, as I said. And we went on a road trip, and through his therapy and so forth, we got to become acquaintances in a really nice way with a group called the Zombies from the 1960s. And these guys are awesome, awesome people. And they met Chuck, and they were just so good to him. And so we had been to I'd been to a number of their concerts. And after Chuck died, I was at a concert in Chicago. And that night, Rod Argent, who was the founder of the Zombies, announced that his mother had died in England that day. And he dedicated the song, if you've ever heard it, called "She's Not There," to his mom. And he wrote that song in her living room. Wow. And so he sang that song. He never dedicated songs. I've seen him a bunch of times, never dedicated songs, but he dedicated that song to his mom that night. Well, I was telling my grandson about that. I went back to Georgia, and I was with my grandson. I was telling him about Rod's mom dying. And Jace had met Rod before. And he says, Papa, he said, "I'm sure that Mr. Rod is sad that his mom died. She was 100 years old." He said, "But she probably had a good life." He said, "But my dad didn't live that long. He was only 38. And I said, you're exactly right. And that was all, and I thought that was a very poignant thing for Jace to point out. But in the mind of a then 9-year-old, he had to explain it to me. He says, "Papa, let me explain." He said, "If you were to die now, I wouldn't be too sad." I said, "Jace Paris, what did you just say to me?" He said, oh, I mean in 25 years, Papa, in 25 years. I said, "No, it's out there." So I actually had a chance to share that story with Rod Argent next year. And he says, "Steve," in his British accent, says, "Steve, what he's just trying to tell you is we're getting old." Yeah, go figure. So I'm not quite ready for that to happen myself. My mom used to have a saying when she was getting on in years, and my mom get a healthy way, and I hope that part of what I'm doing tonight is to be able to laugh and be able to talk about death, because it's all going to happen to all of us, and and so often we don't even want to. A friend of ours actually asked me not to talk about death tonight because it was such a dark subject, not to make jokes about it. But my mom gave me a real healthy perspective on that. See my sister shaking her head, yes, there. And one of the things that my mom used to say, and I'm at this point right now, because we're getting in a car on Monday morning and driving to Cleveland, Ohio, Millie and I are, and one of the things I'm not going to do this weekend, I will not buy any green bananas. My mom always said she was so old
Done
that
buying
she wasn't
green
buying
bananas.
green bananas
She probably died before she got to eat it.
I'm having some things that maybe y'all can help me with. I bought a car that's new to me. It's not a new car. and the first payment is due today. Should I make it? Or wait till everything goes okay with the surgery, which, all joking aside, I'm sure is gonna go fine, and then everything will be okay.
I'd
So I
wait.
know there's a lot of people that are looking forward to heaven, looking forward to, after they die, moving on to the next dimension. But most people aren't looking forward to the actual process of dying. That can be painful. My grandson asked me some very pointed questions about what happened to his daddy when he died, if he suffered, what he went through. And, but the process, you know, is something we don't like to think about, and family doesn't like to think about, and so forth. As for me, I'm kind of looking forward to it, because if I understand physiology properly, that will be the very next time that a certain part of my body gets stiff again. What are you people thinking? I'm of British descent, and every Brit wants to die with a stiff upper lip. So I know that there's one group of people that is not real. Oh, Millie, is that somebody calling you, Millie? I know that ringtone. So there's one group of people that I know are really, really pulling for me to make it through next Wednesday and not to go on. I got an email from God. Did y'all even know that God had email? I didn't. I got an email. And it said, Steve, we got a little bit of a problem. We're getting all these prayer requests for people asking you to shut up and not talk quite so much. I said, but that creates a difficulty, because even God can do almost anything, but he can't make you do something against your will. And he said, and I can't make you stop talking unless you decide to stop talking. He said, but these prayer requests have been so prevalent that we decided to try to come up with another alternative. And that alternative would be to bring you home early. And we thought about that, and we thought, that might work. And we were trying to decide, and we had to do a background check on you to see if you qualified to come home. Barely eke through. And we were just trying to make a decision about whether we were going to put it into effect. And of course, this week would have been an ideal time to do that, with my heart surgery. So, but then, at the last minute, we got a petition. And that petition was signed, it was initiated by your own mother. It was signed by your sister Carol, your Aunt Dottie, all your aunts, all your uncles, your sister Joyce, your brother-in-law Jim, your sister-in-law Barbara. Every person that had gone before me had signed this petition. And what the petition said was, we really want to see him again, but not yet. It's nice and quiet up here, and we'd kind of like to keep it that way. So they said we got to put the kibosh on that idea. So I'm thinking, well, gee, I guess maybe I really do have maybe there really is a problem with me talking too much. Remember a few years back, I was on one of my many trips between Atlanta and Indiana, and I had stopped in Nashville to buy some CDs. A good friend of mine is a very talented Nashville musician, and his wife had a box of CDs for me to buy from him that I gave to my family and friends and so forth to help promote his album. And we talked about me having 7 sisters and her dad growing up in a house full of females. And, it was at a Cracker Barrel in the parking lot with a really nice little discussion with her. I'd never met her before. Nice, good discussion. I get in my car, and I just hadn't even left the parking lot yet. And I got a text message from her. And it said, boy, he sure is a talker. And I thought, I don't think that was meant for me. And about 2 minutes later, I get another text from her. Oh, I wasn't talking about you, I was talking about Josh. And I said, "Oh, back," said, "No, I know I talk too much, so we're gonna see if we can do something about that." So what did I do after I found out that God wasn't gonna take me home early, is I started attending 12-step meetings for people that talk too much. Okay, and you know what they're called? On and on and on. It worked just a little bit different than most 12-step meetings. So I've been to some of those. And when you, and I know some other people here have too, when you go there, you sit in a circle and you read the 12 steps silently. And then you read the 12 traditions silently. Then, most meetings, you would have a discussion for 45 minutes or 50 minutes. Not on and on and on. You sit there and you stare at each other for 45 minutes. You get done, you stand up, you hold hands, you stand in the circle, you say the Lord's Prayer, silently, and everybody goes home. But I must not have worked at it hard enough, because I was talking to my son-in-law after I would go to some of these meetings, my son-in-law Chuck. When Chuck was really sick, was in the hospital and couldn't talk, and he was in a coma, and I would hold his hand and rub his hand, and I'd say, "Chuck, if you'll start talking, I'll stop." Well, lo and behold, he started talking. So for a couple of those last 2 years, he would just sit there and shake his head and call me a liar. He didn't do that. In fact, actually, I have to tell you that Chuck was the best friend that you could ever have. The best friend that a guy could ever have, anyway. Because he sincerely told me over and over that he didn't mind my talking. And I talked a lot with Chuck. I got him to talk too. We actually sang together, which was really scary. Especially the part. Our favorite song, the song we learned to sing together, was Love Shack. And we only did that because I had a partner that said, "I can't hear you, sing a little louder." And I would use that to get Chuck to raise his voice up a little bit. So one of the things I'm very proud of in my life is that I helped to make Chuck's life better over the last 3 years that he was here on this earth. And Chuck had a good sense of humor. He would listen to almost everything I've done tonight. Chuck sat there and critiqued and helped me with. Well, Chuck had a joke of his own that he came up with that, and I want to share that with you, and then one that my grandson came up with too before I close. Chuck's joke was this: he worked for AT&T before he had this stroke, and he says, "Papa," he said, "there's only, there's really isn't much you need to know to be able to work in customer support for AT&T." He said, "I've got a joke about that." I said, "Okay, tell me, Chuck." So he says, "Here's how it goes. Hello, thank you for calling AT&T. This is Chuck Paris. Please turn your device off and wait 30 seconds. And don't forget to give me a 10 on the customer support survey." And he said that was all you needed to know to be a customer support person for AT&T. And then this next one that my grandson, carrying on the tradition of his dad having a good sense of humor, really surprised me with. And then what happened after it was even more surprising. So one day when his dad was in physical therapy, we went to a Mexican restaurant to eat. And we were in the Mexican restaurant, and then went to the restaurant when we were finished, and he's washing his hands, and he looks at the sign in there that says employees must wash hands. And he looks at me and he says, "Papa, why do they even put that there when they never come to wash your hands?" I thought that was pretty funny. I actually took a picture of him standing in front of that sign. I got my phone out, took a picture of him standing in front of that sign, and I posted on book, I posted on book. And for some comedians that I knew, and they thought it was funny too. Excuse me. They thought it was very funny. I didn't think anything of it. This was 4 years ago when that happened. 2 years ago, I went to the Fox Theater in Atlanta to see Steve Martin and Martin Short perform. And it was the first show at the Fox Theater after Prince had done his last show there before he passed away. And so Steve Martin gets up to do his little few minutes of stand-up before they did some things together. And he says, I'm really disappointed in the Fox Theater. Just before I came on stage, I went into the men's room, washed my hands. There's a sign there that says, employees must wash hands. And I waited and waited and nobody came. So I sent a tweet out to Steve Martin with a screenshot of my grandson saying that years earlier. And I said to him, there's two things that come to mind here. And the second one is probably more likely, and I'm almost certain that what has happened. So the first one is that you're stealing jokes from a 6-year-old. He said, I don't think that's it. I said, but the second one is that my 6-year-old grandson is already thinking like you do. That's even more disturbing.
Yeah.
So, in closing, the one thing I want to show, any of you listen to music?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like to listen to music.
Mm.
Where do you get your music from now?
The radio.
iTunes.
You get it from
Vinyl.
okay. So anybody ever listen to anything on iTunes?
Yeah.
No? Spotify, anything like that? Streaming, okay. So if you want to hear new music today, let's see your favorite band. Who did you say, Amanda, your favorite singer was?
Oh gosh, isn't that a loaded question?
The song you did tonight.
Oh, that was Meredith Brooks.
Okay, so if you let's say that Meredith Brooks has a new album coming out, and you want to hear it, and you want to hear what it sounds like, it's real easy today. If you're so inclined, you just go to iTunes and you find the album, and you click on a little thing that has it'll play a little short piece of it, and then you can decide whether you want to buy it, whether you want to pay the 99 cents for a download, whether you want to pay $1.29 for for another one, $8.99 for the whole album, or as I would recommend, buy the CD, which are fewer and fewer of those happening now. But 20 years ago, Patty, did we have that choice 20 years ago?
No way.
Any of you people, what did you have to do 20 years ago if you wanted to hear it?
You bought
Buy a record.
Well, how did you hear a sample of it?
On the radio.
You could hear it on the radio. Well, there's another way you could do, and that is you could go to Best Buy, and they had a whole row of headphones in there. Okay, remember that?
Yeah.
I totally remember.
And you could go and you could find the album you wanted to hear, and you put the headphones on, you turn the dial to the song you want to hear, and you listen to 30 seconds of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what really irritated me was back then, I would go in there and I would listen to a comedy album. And Robin Williams is my all-time favorite comedian, may he rest in peace. And I remember he came out with an album and I wanted to hear it. So you go into Best Buy, you put the headphones on, you find the Robin Williams CD, and you listen to it. And it's great. And then right at the point where it gets to the punchline,